Hey everybody, Dr. David Phelps here, back again during our week of the live stream challenge. We are talking about the soon-to-be launched What's Your Next Book, the blueprint for creating your freedom lifestyle. The actual launch date, official date, is February 23rd, but we're having some fun right now, pre-launch, in just setting the stage, setting the theme, getting people interested and talking about the topic. It's What's Your Next. Today, I'm really honored and really pleased to have another guest. All my guests this week are people I know very well. People that I've spent time with. We have conversations. They're just kind of my people. And so I love having these conversations. With me today, Dr. Michelle Mudge-Riley. Michelle, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
This will be great because you are living the actual What's Your Next profile. I mean, we both have. And I think this is what our audience needs to hear about, like what we went through. So we'll get to that, but I want to give people a bit of your background first. So bear with me while I read a very shortened version of your very long summary here. You got a lot of great credibility here. Dr. Michelle Mudge-Riley is a physician and entrepreneur. She spent over 13 years assisting physicians with career strategy. The doctors she works with are interested in using their degree in a non-traditional way, exploring a non-clinical career, optimizing their skills and passions within their career, and rediscovering meaning and purpose in their work. My gosh, there's so much to be said right there. Dr. Mudge-Riley was called the Doctor's Doctor in a 2010 book that she co-authored because of her success in working with other doctors. The book is titled Physicians in Transition. Dr. Mudge-Riley received her medical degree from Des Moines University Osteopathic Medical School and her master's degree in health administration from Virginia Commonwealth University. Dr. Mudge-Riley has conducted seminars, spoken on topics related to change management, career transition motivation, physician burnout mitigation, wellness and health education at Medical Group Management Association and American College of Physician Executives annual conferences. She's also been published in a variety of books and journals, including Physicians Practice Management, Consultant Live, the Physicians Executive Journal, and the DO. She served as entrepreneur in residence for our mutual alma mater, Trinity University, 2016 to 2017. Now, just to be clear, we weren't there at the same time. Right. Michelle is like much younger than I am, but she has the wisdom of somebody my age. So let me just give her credit where credit's due. But we met through one of my colleagues that was there when I was there, also part of the entrepreneurship program at Trinity. And it's no surprise, I should say, Michelle, that you not only did you go down what I would say, both of us, many of us have gone down this path that, we maybe excelled well in school, or I tell people, I could learn things and memorize and regurgitate very well, which is called passing tests, right? To get me to the next position in life. And people would tap you on the head, and whether it was academic proficiency or, gosh, you could have been a great athlete, or maybe you were theatrical or creative. But, we all got kind of tapped during school. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but early on, it seems like our destiny has been kind of laid out in front of us. And we don't question it. We're young people, and the teacher, parents say, "Oh, Johnny, Susie, you're really good at this, and so sign us up," and off we go, right? And we both did. A lot of people listening here have done that, and then we get into that role, that model, and something may be a defining moment, a shift, a change. It could be a personal thing. For me, it was my daughter's health. It could be an economic thing. I mean, all kinds of things can shift the gears. But the scary part is, none of us really enjoy change that much. I mean, we like habits, we like routine, we like to be secure in knowing that we have this well-laid plan in life, right? That's how we're built. That's how and to ever think about sowing as much time as someone with a relatively high education and the sunk cost fallacy of the time investment in the education and getting that role, and then all of a sudden saying, I need to think about switching gears. I mean, for most people, that dream gets muted very quickly. Give me a little bit of that, and then I want people to hear about your story, because you made a major pivot.
Yeah, well, you're so right in that it is really hard to think about change, especially if you're a professional who's always gone down a certain path, envisioned yourself as a dentist or a doctor or an attorney, and when you get to the end point, thinking, this may not be what I thought it was, or really what I want for the next 40 years. It's a very difficult time. You have to really think about all the things you missed that you should have gotten, that you might have needed in order to really figure out what it was you wanted to do. And so you kind of have to figure out what those things were. And you have to think about, how do I do this in a practical sense with just the obligations and the mindset of being a mid-career professional? You have a mortgage, you may have kids, you have responsibilities that you may not have had when you were in your 20s. So you're absolutely right. I mean, change is hard, but it's even harder when you're a little bit further along.
Yeah, I think it's, we tend to think, why didn't someone help us or give us these options when we were younger, when we could have taken some of our natural skill sets, inherent skill sets, but showed us other options. And I think it's difficult to do. Number one, when we're young, we don't know. There are counselors, there are people that are certainly do, I think, a credible job in helping give some guidance. But I think still so much of it, Michelle, is based on traditional. And today, more than ever, it's really why I wrote the book, because you deal with your physician colleagues. I deal with a lot of dentists in the same regard. And the fact is that the traditional approach to life really doesn't fit anymore because, well, the world's changing at light speed today. What people used to think about was going to school and getting some level of degree, certification, licensing, vocation, whatever it is. And then that was going to be their thing for the next 35 or 40 years, right? Until you get the gold watch. I mean, that's long gone. But even today, with your own business, whether it's, in a professional practice or just a small business, the ability to be willing to iterate, change, pivot, the adaptability, the flexibility that we have to, I think, inherently start to develop, and we haven't before, is critical today. Is critical. So you may not take a complete pivot like Michelle and I did, from our clinical work, because that's where we came from. But to your point, Michelle, there's skill sets that we all have inherently that can be expanded. New ones can be found and developed, and then can either add to changing the current dynamic. You don't have to get completely out of practice. That's what we're saying here. You could stay, and you help people to do all things, but you yourself, you made a pretty sharp turn. Why don't you give us a little bit of that story, where you started and kind of the number of years where you went from point A to point B to point C, and kind of bring us up to date to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and you're also right about the fact that it is a different world now, and nothing's wrong with going the traditional route and even getting on that train and going towards that thing that you think you might want to do. You're okay. I mean, nothing's wrong with you for realizing that isn't what you really wanted to do, because the world is different, like you said, and people don't know how to tell you these things back when you're in your teens and 20s, and you don't know how to interpret them either. So everyone is very well intended and well meaning, and it's just a place that a lot of people land and then they're not sure what to do. So that's why it's great that you're talking about this now. I find that it's just refreshing for people to hear it spoken out loud, because they may be feeling these things but not know it, and be anxious or depressed or just angry all the time. And it's coming out in other ways. It's nice to hear others affirm that nothing really is wrong with you, that maybe it's just time for a change, or maybe you just need a slight pivot, maybe not a full pivot, maybe just a slight one, and thinking about what else you can do. So my story is that I always wanted to be a doctor. It was my dream ever since I was like in third grade or something. I told my dad that I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. And of course, he was elated, because what parent wouldn't be? I'm a first generation doctor, so that made it even better for him. And so my family encouraged me throughout school. And like you, learning comes easy to me. I can memorize very easily. I can take tests. I don't mind tests. I like tests. And so it's pretty easy to get on that train and keep going. And it's all laid out for you. So it makes it even better, because in a time when it's already turbulent, you're an adolescent or a young adult, you're figuring out the world. It's nice to think, I've got this career thing figured out. I know what I'm going to do. And you really just feel great about that. Everyone around you is telling you, wow, you're going to be a doctor, a dentist. That's fantastic. And so that further feeds that ego and that feeling of, yeah, I'm doing the right thing when I'm not sure what else is right, but I'm doing the right thing by my career. So I was no different. And I was interested in medicine too. I liked science. So got into med school. It was the best day of my life. And med school was great, by the way, at the first 2 years anyway. And I tell people this, and some people can identify, and some people say, wow, I hated the first 2 years, but I love them. I love to learn. I don't mind tests. And I made a lot of great friends. And so I felt like I was in the right place. And then we started clinicals. And there was just nothing I could see myself doing for the next 40, 50 years. I liked it all okay, but I didn't love it. And I felt like something was missing. So that's when things started to get a little bit challenging. And every time I started to talk about this just a little bit, people would shut me down pretty quickly.
Right.
Did that happen to you?
Well, yeah, and you said earlier too. I mean, admitting these feelings. I mean, it's like you're fearful to do it because you're going to get knocked back down. People are like, "What are you talking? Wait, you're a doctor. What are you complaining about?" Right? But it's your life. It's our lives. It's if you're watching this today, it's your life. So please don't be apologetic about your, but finding a tribe that you can talk to. But yeah, carry on. You're exactly right on point.
Yeah. So it was tough because of that. I had all these feelings. I didn't know who to talk to about them. I would be shut down. And so at one point, I just said, I am going to take some time and see what else is out there. And I ended up getting a job in industry. And that opened up my world quite a bit and showed me just a lot of the things that I knew were out there, but I hadn't been exposed to yet. So then that kind of snowballed into some other things. I got another degree, which isn't required, by the way, but without any mentorship or guidance, I didn't know when school was comfortable. So boom, I'm going back to school to get a business degree. And but that did open up some doors. So at some point, I was able to be in a job that gave me a chance to again spread my wings. That job lasted about 1.5 years because I outgrew that job as well. And I just learned all of the things that I had missed along the way, the how to network, how to not be afraid of networking, and how to really just help other people. Because that's what networking is. What can I do for you? It's nothing else. It's fun, but we don't learn that in professional school, and we don't learn how to do it or why it's important. I learned how to write a resume. I learned how to look at jobs critically and understand that I'm the one interviewing the other person as much as they're interviewing me, and how it's almost another language sometimes than I had been taught, just going through to become a clinical medical physician. So that's my story. I ended up getting into consulting and some pharmaceutical work, and I started a couple of businesses along the way. Some worked out really well and some did not. And that's the nature of being an entrepreneur. But it's been amazing. And I used to think I was lazy and hated work. And so maybe that's why I wasn't doing well and liking it. But I realized very quickly when I started getting into some other things that I'm not lazy at all. And I hear this from other physicians. They say, maybe I just don't like work. And I tell them, you don't like the work you don't like doing. Wait until you find something you really love.
Sure. No, that's really good. I mean, you brought up a lot of great points here. Just want to reiterate, the permission to fail, or permission to test, I should say. We don't get that in school.
No.
I mean, especially if you're going into something that requires, high levels of expertise, whether you're as a doctor, you're dealing with human beings, or you might be an engineer where you make a critical mistake. And I mean, a bridge could fall, where there's really a high degree of need there. We're not allowed to even think about making mistakes in that arena. So the entrepreneurial side that you talked about being inside you, and I think, looking back, that it was always inside you. Right. I mean, but I think when we get on this track, whatever the track is, that society, teachers, parents, well-meaning people help us get on, right? Then whatever is really inside us gets kind of shoved back down. And now you're on this track that says, okay, you kind of signed up to be this in this model, this role. This is who you are. This is how you act. This is how you behave. And so you just suppress all those other things. I don't know about you, Michelle, but I have no regrets about dentistry at all. I mean, it paved the way. I learned a lot. Like you, I like to learn. But here's what I found is that kind of work requires a lot of very focused detail, start to end. And I thought back in my life, I thought, now, why wouldn't somebody have asked me when I was younger, when I was thinking about applying, say, to dental school? Hey, David, did you ever like sit down as a kid and, build models, which, is intricate, building models? I never had the patience. Clue number one, right? Clue number one, because you're going to be working in somebody's mouth where they can open this big and you're working in micromillimeters. How's that going to feel? Now, I was pretty good getting in and getting out, quick procedures. That was me, get in, get out. But you give me a long case, oh my gosh, suck the energy out of me. I'd rather be like digging ditches. I mean, because the energy, I'm talking about the energy level.
Yes.
So I always tell people, it's like when you find things that drain energy, and look, not everything in your life is going to give you energy. There's things we have to do, but overall, if what you're doing or contemplating doing is pulling energy from you, so you have to kind of get up every day and like, I have to go do this, probably not a good sign. So what does give you energy? And that's where you talked about, it's more exposure, giving yourself more exposure, exploring. And even if you're on a track right now that maybe you're feeling a little bit of the angst that we're talking about, what I'm talking about with Michelle today, how would people, in your opinion, Michelle, wherever they are right now, give themselves some leeway, some permission without derailing the whole train, give themselves some leeway to do some, get some exposure, experiment, explore a little bit. What ways do you help people like even begin to see where other passions and other skill sets might lead them to even a side gig?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very freeing to start doing even just a few little things, because you start to realize how much is out there and what may be more right for you. And like you said, what gives you that energy? That's a huge, huge thing. There's that Harvard Business Review article, manage your energy, not your time.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's when you are doing something that gives you energy, it's just amazing how much it props you up. And when you're doing something that sucks your energy away, just how tired you are, and maybe even how physically ill you are, because you may experience some of those symptoms. I know a lot of people have. So yeah, as far as what you can do, if you feel like you might be in this situation, there's a lot of little things you can do without derailing that train, as you say. You can start reaching out to people that you know are supportive. And the good thing is there's a lot more people out there, and they're a lot easier to find these days. When we were looking at a career transition, LinkedIn, Facebook, all these social media, Clubhouse, that's a new one, they didn't even exist.
Right.
And so it was really hard to find that support, that community, and that camaraderie. And so really finding some of those people, you don't even really have to reach out to them, just maybe even Googling, trying to find non-clinical careers, non-traditional careers for doctors, for dentists, seeing who's out there and who's doing what, and what articles you can find. Another thing is to really just look at your options, and your options are limitless. So you may feel like, as a dentist or a doctor, I can only do something that builds on that skill set in education. And while you can do a lot of other non-traditional things, that's not all you can do. You're a smart individual who's driven, who's disciplined, who can succeed in anything you set your mind to, because you got through a professional school and the training. So you can go look at things that are completely unrelated. I know doctors that have started bed and breakfasts, or become plumbers, or done something, moved to Italy and become a chef. Something just completely radical. And then there are other doctors who have done more traditional non-clinical things, some more locums or telemedicine or utilization review work. And then there's stuff in the middle, like administration and leadership and pharmaceuticals or device, or even things within the dentist industry. I know Colgate-Palmolive hires scientific managers. So there's all kinds of things you can do, and you don't have to go and do any of that. Just look and see what may exist. And that's why I run a conference for physicians that lets them know what options are out there by having different physician speakers who have successfully transitioned either part-time or full-time or just have a side gig into a non-clinical or non-traditional job. And we also run one for dentists. So that it's easier to find this information. That's the best part.
Absolutely, absolutely. In the book, What's Your Next, Michelle, I described what I call 5 freedom assets. And those 5 freedom assets, the first one begins with yourself, investing in yourself. I mean, that's number one, always investing in yourself. And there's so many ways to do that. The other 4 are investing in your business, whatever that may be. And it could be that side gig business or what you're talking about, things that you can do there. The third one is, and I want to touch more on this because it's come out every time this week, and you've already hit on it many times today, relationships, the network. The fourth one is your capital base, meaning the money that you put into savings or retirement, whatever you invest in, right? Or just how you monetize and get your capital base working for you. So over time, that capital base, if it's done well, you can replace some or eventually all of your active income, which again takes the pressure off and allows you to explore more. So that's another one. And then my fifth one, which sometimes is put off because we're so busy in life trying to get to some point of security, which always seems elusive because things always change. But the last one is legacy. Legacy is, what's legacy about? And oftentimes people think about, well, legacy is something that I will leave, from the end of my life, whether I write a book or I'll leave money or wealth or whatever I've got. And I think, no. You're actually, your legacy, you're building it right now. Every day, your legacy is being built. So don't take it off the ball. But I want to list those 5 because I think those are 5 good constructs. But going back to relationships, I think the other part that's hard for a lot of us that have spent a lot of time in a career profession with all that education is that we've kind of learned in life to kind of go solo. I mean, school doesn't teach collaboration. You don't get to take your boards or do your practicals, as a group. You're on your own. Go do it. So we're not generally built to share or collaborate. Yet in life, collaboration at some level is really what life's about. That's where the networking relationships come from. So when people are maybe in a position thinking, gosh, I've been doing this thing for a lot of years and kind of having those sleepless nights, but you just don't know who to talk to. That's where they really need to reach out and find that community, that tribe, as you said, so much easier today, and start having those discussions. What I've seen you and our mutual good friend, Dr. Laura Brenner, do is have those communities where people can come and have no better word for it than this, but a safe place to have conversations, right? Where no one's judging you. No one's saying, oh, how could you think about that? No, express yourself, because once you start to express yourself and you feel like you can actually articulate your real feelings, if this is anything in life, that's when you can actually start to get some transformation. If you keep it all inside and it just spins in your head, very little ever happens, in my opinion. Have you seen the same thing?
Oh, you described it so well. And it happens to men and women equally. So this is not something that's gender specific. It is very much across the board. And it's something really magical happens when you feel like you're in a safe place. But that safe place does sometimes have to be with your peers, because we all know what we all went through. And that's why these conversations are so important. So I love your list. I think that's a very comprehensive way for people to really think about getting started with this, to look at that list and think, okay, how can I be purposeful and strategic about doing these things? Because, it just takes some action, one foot in front of the other, and suddenly you're making progress and you're feeling better.
For you, Michelle, as you talked about, going in your pivoting in your career, a couple quick questions. One, were you married at the time that you were shifting from your initial foray into medicine? Were you married and have any children at that time?
Good question. I was not married. I had just met my fiance about a year prior, and we weren't married, or we weren't even engaged yet. So, of course, a lot of the blame went to him from the external sources.
Of course.
Yeah. So that was a little bit of a challenge. It's since been completely fine. But that was interesting. But at the same time, too, not being married meant I didn't have a safety net. So I know that there are a lot of people who say, I have to have a paycheck, I don't have a spouse, or I'm a single mom or single dad. And I mean, for me, it was like that. I didn't have kids yet, but I had to have health insurance and I had to have a paycheck. And so that upped the ante and the anxiety a little bit too.
So how did you deal with that? The reason I asked that is, again, is because a lot of the people that were probably watching and listening to this are, again, are very responsible people.
Mhm.
You know, and taking care of either themselves, or if they do have family and then their income that they create by going to work, their job, business, whatever it is, you know, they feel like it's critical to the family.
Mhm.
And if I take my foot off the pedal at all, that's going to cause some conflict. How do you coach people through that? Because that's a real thing, but I know there's ways through it. Give a few of your key points that you would help people with to kind of have those conversations and maybe create a little bit of space so that they could explore a little bit more.
Yeah. So there are multiple ways to do this, and it kind of depends on who you are and in terms of what you choose as your right path. But some of those paths are one, finding a method for getting passive income. And there are lots of ways to do that. I know you talk about some of those ways in other places, but some of that passive income can eventually replace that paycheck, and actually it can build your wealth a whole lot faster than just getting that paycheck all the time. So that's one way. Another way is to maybe cut back a little on what you're doing and then cut back on your lifestyle just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Mhm.
I know that that's equally as hard sometimes,
Mhm.
and maybe even people will say impossible. But really, if you kind of look at it as how can I do this and little baby steps each way and each time, you can accomplish one of these things or another strategy. Nothing's going to be easy, but that's just part of this. That's part of mid-career career change. It's going to be hard. It's easier than when you did it in your 20s because you know more, you're wiser, you know more about the world, you know more about yourself. So in that sense it's easier, but it's harder in some senses too because you may have those financial obligations or other just perceived obstacles that are there. That the mindset thing is so important though. It's more of a, you've really got to shift from the I can't do this, this is impossible, that trapped feeling that you're giving yourself,
Yeah.
to how can I do this? There is always a plan B. And I think for me, that shift was so important. And it was one of the things that I look back and say, I never want to be in that place again where I felt so trapped. And I never will be, because it wasn't really a circumstance change as much as it was a mindset shift.
That is so key. I hope people listen to that again. It's not a circumstance change; it's a mindset change. What we believe about ourselves, about our lives, believing that our self identity is all in what we do. That just holds people back so much.
Mhm.
We all have, as I said earlier, inherent talents that just haven't been expressed so many times, and getting over that, the mindset issues, I think, is a huge part of it. Michelle, kind of last question to you. In
Mhm.
working with the many physicians and dentists that you've had a chance to work with, have you ever had any that were 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 not helped in some way in their life by considering some pivots or changes? Anybody just actually cause a devastation in their life? I kind of expect to know the answer, but I
Yeah.
want people to hear from you because you've worked with many. What's been kind of the run rate for people that have taken even small steps or big pivots?
Yeah. So it seems really, really hard and really, really scary. And it is. No one has regretted any of the shifts that they've made. There's been no one who says, I wish I could go back to feeling trapped,
Mm,
or I wish I could go back to always running on that hamster wheel and not knowing what I was going to do, or going into work every day and feeling like you were walking through sand because you hated it so much as you were just walking towards that door to open it, knowing what was coming with the just your day, what your day looked like, no matter what that was. So just really remember that the smaller the steps you make, that's okay, because that will help you make bigger steps potentially. And that will show you that it's not quite as scary. Nothing bad's going to happen. That big monster is not going to come out and bite you. And who knows where it will lead. And, there have been people who have resisted changing and any of the different coaching or the even advice or support that communities have provided. And even though they've resisted it, they've always kind of at some point realized, okay, maybe I can just let go just a little bit. And then they'll tell the group, why didn't I do that sooner?
Well, that's again why a community can be so helpful, because we all have trepidation about making any kind of change. And when there's other people that you have a like-mindedness for, an affinity for, people that know you, as you said, gone through the trenches, kind of with you in that same path, and they're saying, hey, it's okay. I know how you feel, but if you just take that step, promise you, it's not going to hurt you. It won't bite. It's actually going to open up some new vistas. And so I think that encouragement from being in a community is a big, powerful part of this. Well, Michelle, gosh, I really appreciate you sharing with us today. I think you really hopefully opened some additional opportunities for people who have been thinking about this. And I want to leave a challenge for people today, kind of based on our conversation. My challenge to our audience today is make a list of the activities that you do on primarily your work-related business, career, job, profession, whatever it is, those activities that give you energy, and those that seem to suck it away. And, outside that realm, outside of your business, then other things that do give you energy, be cognizant of those things. What takes away energy, what gives you energy, use that as a little bit of a roadmap, right? To start the exploration. That could be something that would start enabling you to say, aha, there's something now how can I take that activity that gives me energy, and how can I start to mold that into, a next thing, a next association, a side gig, a collaboration with somebody who brings something else to this piece. That's where I think the fun is. And I think so much in life that the childhood, the natural childhood tendencies for us to explore, right?
Mm-hmm.
We start out in life, get just taken away and constrained as we go through the formal education process, and we got to open that back up again, because life is to be explored. It's to be challenged, right? And just moving on to your next, I think, is so important. So, Dr. Michelle Mudge-Riley, I appreciate you so much. You're a great friend, a great cohort in helping people explore life. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for all that you do too. I'm so glad we reconnected years ago, and this has been great. Thank you for having me today.
So good. Thank you all for being here. Work on that challenge, and we'll see you on the next challenge. Take care.